Let's begin. But first, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Sky High Stories. The Selfie went live at 12:47 a.m., the hour when secrets feel safer and the world seems half asleep. A single tap, a soft glow on a phone screen, and suddenly it was there, sliding into timelines, appearing between memes and midnight confessions. At first glance, it looked harmless. Intimate, yes, but nothing explicitly scandalous. Just enough to invite curiosity. Just enough to whisper a story without telling it outright. Late-night scrollers paused. Fingers hovered. Screenshots were taken. The comment section began to murmur. Whose room is that? That watch looks expensive. Is she serious right now? Emojis piled up, fire, hearts, side eyes. Some people admired the confidence. Others sensed something wrong but couldn't quite name it. Envy mixed with suspicion, admiration tangled with unease. The post began to travel, shared quietly at first, then faster, louder. The photo itself was carefully careless. Rumpled white sheets, still warm with implication. A headboard recognizable to those who knew it, though no one said so out loud. Near the edge of the frame, almost accidental, was a man's watch resting on the mattress, polished metal catching the light. It wasn't tagged. It didn't need to be. That single detail turned the image from flirtation into accusation. Within minutes, the selfie stopped belonging to just one woman. It became a conversation, a puzzle, a rumor in motion. And then, miles away, in a quiet bedroom lit only by her phone, the wife saw it. Her thumb stopped mid-scroll. Her breath caught. The room felt suddenly cold. She stared at the screen, at the sheets she recognized, at the watch she had bought. And in that frozen second, before anger or tears could surface, she understood one thing clearly. This wasn't just a photo. It was a declaration. Before the betrayal, the wife's life was built on quiet consistency. She wasn't someone who chased attention or displayed her happiness online. Her world existed in routines that felt safe. Morning coffee poured into the same mug, familiar music playing softly while she prepared for the day, evenings shaped around shared dinners and small conversations that once meant everything. Her marriage had been her anchor, something she believed in deeply, not because it was perfect, but because she thought it was real. She had invested herself fully. Emotionally, practically, silently. She remembered anniversaries without reminders, defended her husband when others questioned his absences, and filled in the gaps he left behind without complaint. Love, to her, was loyalty expressed through patience. It was choosing the same person every day, even when life grew dull or demanding. She believed that privacy was sacred, that problems belonged inside the marriage, not scattered across public platforms. There had been signs, of course, small ones she explained away because trust felt easier than suspicion. Late nights blamed on work. A phone always turned face down, passwords changed without reason. Conversations that once flowed now ended quickly, as if his mind was elsewhere. He smiled less, touched her less, listened only halfway. When she asked if something was wrong, he brushed it off with tired reassurance, and she chose to believe him. Dignity mattered to her. She never imagined herself arguing publicly, exposing wounds for strangers to analyze. Loyalty, in her mind, was not conditional. It was something you honored even when it went unseen. That belief shaped every choice she made, including the ones that kept her from questioning too much. That was why the betrayal cut so deeply. It wasn't just about infidelity. It was about humiliation, about her private life being turned into public entertainment. The bed, the watch, the space she thought was safe had been transformed into a spectacle. What shattered her wasn't only that he cheated, but that her trust, her restraint, her belief in quiet respect had been used against her. From the mistress's point of view, the selfie wasn't reckless, it was strategic. She had learned long ago that attention was currency, and visibility was power. Being desired, being seen, made her feel chosen. The affair itself existed in shadows, but the validation she craved required light. A secret only mattered if it could be hinted at, if others could sense that she had something they didn't. Posting the selfie wasn't about love. It was about competition. About proving, without saying a word, that she had won something worth envying. The rumpled sheets were a trophy. The man's watch was an unspoken signature. She told herself it was subtle enough to stay safe, suggestive enough to spark curiosity, and vague enough to deny if questioned. In her mind, this balance made her clever, untouchable. Insecurity sat beneath her confidence like a fault line. She needed the likes, the comments, the silent comparisons. Each notification reassured her that she mattered, that she wasn't invisible. The idea that someone else, another woman, might still hold legitimacy in his life felt threatening. The selfie was her way of staking a claim without confrontation, marking territory in pixels and implication. She believed secrecy was her shield. No names were tagged. No faces were shown. Social media, she thought, was a game of suggestion, not accountability. She underestimated how closely people look when something feels off. She underestimated how truth doesn't need details to be recognized. To her, the post felt like a victory lap. Friends reacted with admiration, strangers with envy. She scrolled through responses, smiling, convinced she had mastered the art of being seen without being caught. What she didn't realize was that the same stage she used for validation was also a weapon, one that could turn instantly. In thinking she controlled the narrative, she failed to see the irony forming beneath her post. She thought she was winning, unaware that attention, once invited, rarely follows the rules of its creator. The confrontation didn't happen in a dramatic explosion. It unfolded quietly, behind closed doors, in the space where trust once lived. The wife waited until the house was still, until there were no distractions left to hide behind. She showed him the photo without raising her voice, without accusation in her tone. She watched his face carefully, searching for honesty, for remorse, for anything real. What she received instead were excuses dressed as explanations. He laughed nervously at first, claiming she was overthinking it. Then came the half-truths. It's not what it looks like. You're reading too much into it. When she didn't back down, the story shifted. He questioned her perception, suggested her stress was making her paranoid. He insisted nothing inappropriate was happening, even as his eyes avoided hers. Each sentence was designed not to explain, but to confuse. The air in the room grew heavy. Every familiar object, the couch, the photos on the wall, the bed they shared, felt like evidence of something already broken. She felt anger rising, but beneath it was something colder, clarity. This wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure. He wasn't only denying the affair, he was denying her reality. Inside, she battled two instincts. One urged her to leave quietly, to preserve her dignity by disappearing without a scene. The other demanded she stand her ground, refuse to be minimized, refuse to carry shame that wasn't hers. Tears threatened, but she swallowed them back. Crying felt like surrender, and she was no longer willing to beg for truth. The turning point came not with his confession, but with his indifference. The way he seemed more afraid of being exposed than of hurting her settled something deep inside her. In that moment, she understood that emotional reactions would only give him control. So she did something unexpected. She went silent. No shouting. No pleading. No dramatic exit. Instead, she listened, observed, and remembered. Pain didn't disappear, but it transformed. It sharpened into focus. As she walked away from the conversation, one decision was already forming in her mind. If the truth was going to come out, it would be on her terms. And this time, she would choose strategy over tears. Days passed, but the selfie refused to disappear. Even when the wife stopped searching for it, it found its way back to her, reshared, cropped, discussed in whispers across the internet. One night, as she opened the post again, not to torture herself but to understand it, her attention drifted downward. Beneath the image, nestled between comments and reactions, were targeted ads. Clean. Polished. Strategically placed. Designed to be seen. That was when the realization struck her with startling clarity. This space wasn't neutral. It was curated. Controlled. And more importantly, it was public. Words spoken in private could be denied, twisted, erased. But digital placement was different. It existed where excuses couldn't interrupt. Where timing and visibility mattered more than volume. She didn't act immediately. Instead, she observed. She noticed how ads rotated, how long they stayed, how they aligned perfectly under the post. Curiosity replaced despair. She began researching quietly, learning about ad slots, algorithms, bidding, and reach. How much it cost to place a message directly beneath specific content. How to choose timing so it wouldn't be missed. Each detail felt strangely grounding, like assembling something solid out of chaos. The heartbreak that once consumed her softened into something calmer, more deliberate. Planning gave her back a sense of control that the betrayal had stolen. This wasn't about revenge fueled by rage. It was about truth delivered with precision. She didn't need to shout. She didn't need names or accusations. The placement itself would do the talking. One evening, as she sat alone with her laptop, the words surfaced fully formed, simple and impossible to ignore. No insults. No explanations. Just a sentence that couldn't be argued with. He cheated here. She stared at the line for a long time, testing its weight. It felt final. Accurate. Inevitable. In that moment, she knew she wasn't reacting anymore. She was responding. And with that realization, anticipation replaced sorrow. The truth was no longer trapped inside her. Soon, it would sit exactly where it belonged. The execution was almost clinical. There was no hesitation, no second guessing, no emotional spiral. The wife approached the process the same way she approached everything else now, with distance and precision. She logged into the ad platform late at night, when the world felt quiet enough to think clearly. Each step felt deliberate, like placing chess pieces instead of reacting to an attack. She selected the post carefully, ensuring the placement would appear directly beneath the selfie. Visibility mattered. Context mattered even more. She adjusted the settings, choosing timing when engagement would be highest, when curious eyes would return to the image. This wasn't impulse. It was strategy refined by patience. Then came the details. She rejected flashy fonts and aggressive colors. There would be no drama in the design, only clarity. She chose a clean, neutral font, something that felt factual, almost official. The background remained simple, unremarkable, so nothing distracted from the message itself. The words were centered, balanced, impossible to misread. She tested different layouts, watching how each version appeared on screen, ensuring the message landed exactly the way she intended. There were no names. No accusations written in anger. No emotional language that could be dismissed as bitterness. Just 4 words, sharp and restrained, carrying more weight than any public argument ever could. He cheated here. Before confirming the purchase, she paused, not out of fear, but respect for the finality of the moment. Once it went live, there would be no undoing it. She thought briefly of the woman who had posted the selfie, of the man who had denied everything, and of the space they believed belonged only to them. Then she clicked confirm. The ad went live quietly. No notification announced it. No dramatic reveal accompanied its appearance. It simply settled into place beneath the selfie, steady and unmovable, like a marker driven into the ground. Anyone who saw the image now saw the message too. For a moment, nothing happened. No comments. No reactions. Just silence. And in that stillness, before the internet caught its breath, the truth stood exposed, waiting for the explosion it was about to cause. The silence didn't last long. Within minutes, someone noticed the ad. Then another. Screenshots began circulating, first in private messages, then in group chats, and finally across public timelines. The image and the words beneath it were captured together, inseparable now, frozen in digital evidence. What had once been a suggestive selfie transformed into an exhibit, a before and after that demanded explanation. The comment sections exploded. Speculation hardened into accusation. People zoomed in on details they had previously overlooked: the watch, the headboard, the angle of the photo. Questions turned sharp, judgment unforgiving. Some condemned the mistress openly, others debated the ethics of exposure, but almost everyone agreed on one thing: the message beneath the post changed everything. It reframed the image from flirtation into proof. Internet detectives went to work with ruthless efficiency. Old posts were dug up. Timelines were compared. Familiar objects were matched to past photos. Someone recognized the watch from a tagged anniversary picture posted years earlier by the wife. Another user pointed out the room's layout, identical to a background scene in the husband's stories. The dots connected faster than anyone could stop them. Panic followed. The mistress deleted the post, then her stories, then locked her account entirely. But deletion only confirmed what denial could not. Screenshots outpaced erasure. The image, now paired permanently with the ad's message, continued spreading without her consent. Every attempt to disappear made the story grow louder. Throughout it all, the wife said nothing. She didn't comment. She didn't like or share a single post. She didn't defend herself or explain her choice. Her silence felt intentional, almost commanding. By refusing to engage, she removed herself from the chaos and left the focus exactly where it belonged, on the truth itself. The internet did what it always does when given a clear narrative. It amplified. It judged. It remembered. News pages and gossip forums picked up the screenshots, labeling the moment as ruthless, iconic, devastating. But for the wife, the eruption wasn't about applause or validation. It was about consequence. What began as one careless selfie had triggered a public reckoning. And as the story spiraled beyond control, one thing became undeniable. The truth didn't need defending when it was placed where no one could ignore it. The consequences hit him slowly at first, then all at once. Friends he had considered allies began sending awkward messages, distancing themselves. Casual colleagues made pointed remarks, subtle jokes disguised as idle chatter. At work, whispers traveled faster than the quarterly reports. His reputation, carefully cultivated over years, began to crack under the weight of public scrutiny. No one questioned the veracity of the evidence. The ad beneath the selfie left no room for doubt. Every connection, every handshake, every invitation now carried an invisible judgment. Finally, he confronted the wife again. But this time the energy had shifted entirely. Gone was the arrogance, the excuses, the half-truths. In its place was desperation, a raw, almost childlike fear. He pleaded, stumbling over words, grasping for explanations that no longer mattered. The very composure he had once used to manipulate her now revealed his loss of control. He realized, too late, that the power he had assumed over her emotions, and over the narrative of their marriage, was gone forever. Regret settled heavily over him, bitter and unyielding. He saw clearly, for the first time, the magnitude of his mistakes. The betrayal, the lies, the disregard for the life he had vowed to protect. But recognition did not reverse actions, nor did apologies erase the evidence. The ad, the screenshots, the whispers, they existed independently of his remorse, unstoppable and immutable. The wife remained calm throughout the confrontation. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She didn't bargain or plead. Her quiet presence, steady and unshakable, spoke louder than any anger could. Every word he tried to force out of her seemed to fall flat, swallowed by her composure. And in that calmness lay her most potent power, the undeniable truth that she no longer needed him, and never would again. In that moment, the betrayal arc reached its inevitable conclusion. He was left facing the fallout alone, stripped of control and forced to reckon with the consequences. The wife, by contrast, emerged untouchable, her dignity intact, her strategy complete, and her power reaffirmed. Once the chaos of exposure had passed, the wife began the process of disentangling her life from the man who had betrayed her. Legal papers were signed, conversations were formal and measured, and every step was taken deliberately to protect both her future and her dignity. Emotionally, she felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. A weight lifted, even as scars remained. There was no rush to justify her actions to anyone, no need to explain the strategy behind the ad or the silence she had maintained. She made a conscious decision to refuse public drama. No interviews. No viral statements. No social media posts to fan the flames. The story had already reached millions, and she knew that words from her mouth could only dilute the impact of the truth she had placed so quietly and effectively. Her power lay in restraint, in choosing when to speak and when to let consequences speak for themselves. What remained was quiet strength. Where humiliation might have lingered, she replaced it with resolve. Every interaction, every decision moving forward was guided not by revenge, but by self-possession. She reclaimed her narrative, not as a victim, but as someone who had taken control when all else seemed out of reach. The betrayal, while painful, became a defining moment of clarity rather than collapse. Eventually, the ad disappeared, removed by the platform or forgotten in the scroll of new content. But its message endured. Those 4 words, "He cheated here," had left a mark that couldn't be erased, and they had done their work. In walking away on her terms, she ensured that dignity, truth, and quiet victory became hers forever. In the aftermath, she realized that the power she had wielded wasn't revenge, it was dignity. Exposure and cruelty are often mistaken for one another, but they exist on opposite sides of intention. Revenge seeks to humiliate, to inflict pain for personal satisfaction. Dignity, on the other hand, allows truth to exist on its own, without embellishment or spectacle. By choosing placement over drama, she had demonstrated that clarity and timing are far more devastating than anger ever could be. There is a subtle art in letting truth speak for itself. No public statements, no shouting, no moralizing were necessary. The world witnessed what was real, unvarnished, undeniable. The moment she placed the ad beneath the selfie, she created a permanent record that transcended emotion. It was a fact, simple and inarguable. There was a lesson in that quiet precision. Sometimes power is most effective when it doesn't clamor for attention. Some betrayals don't need to be shouted from rooftops. They don't need to be dissected or dramatized for others to understand. Sometimes, the right placement, at the right moment, is enough to make a statement that lasts far beyond the fleeting noise of social media. And in that realization, she found something that neither heartbreak nor rage could ever give her. Control over her story, mastery over her emotions, and the final word, without ever speaking it aloud. The truth didn't need a caption. It simply existed, clear, unmovable, and unforgettable.